I know a guy who has 4 metric tons of silver. And if he deposits that into the state depository and it's digitized, he has liquidity. And that's the major issue with stackers.
In the past few years, we have seen a wave of new legislation sweeping across the country on a state-by-state basis, giving you your ability to use gold and silver as legal tender. But what about Florida? What's going on in Florida? Today, we have a special guest, Daniel Diaz. He's the executive director of Citizens for Sound Money. He lives in Florida, and he has some exciting news to share with us regarding legal tender legislation in the state of Florida. Daniel, welcome to Ron's Basement.
Thank you, Ron. It's great to be here.
So there's a sales tax on certain silver and gold transactions in the state of Florida, but you've got some big news for us about what we might expect here in the coming year.
Yeah, absolutely. So Florida right now has a sales tax on the purchase of gold and silver if it's less than $500, which is decent. But like if you buy a few rounds of silver, and you're gonna have to pay 6 or 7%, depending on the county you're in, on sales tax. Our bill does 3 things. The first thing is it creates gold and silver as legal tender specie. The second, it creates a state depository so the state can have its gold and silver within its territorial borders. And the third thing it does is creates electronic gold and silver so you can spend your gold and silver with a debit card, just like you can spend your dollars with a debit card or use Venmo or whatnot. There'll be other solutions like that. But the important thing about the legal tender, when you make gold and silver legal tender, we also have specific language that gets rid of all tax liabilities. So no longer will you have to pay sales tax on gold and silver within the state of Florida if this gets passed, or when, let me say when, because we have a lot of movement in Florida, which I'll touch on here shortly. And the other thing legal tender bills do, which I didn't mention in the other video or interview, is that there is a federal code, U.S. Code 18, Section 486. And I'm going to read it verbatim because it's kind of scary. I'm surprised 486 that the federal government passed this. It was passed, I think, in 1943, but it's U.S. Code 18486 states, whoever, except as authorized by law, which includes states making it legal tender, makes or utters or passes or attempts to utter or pass any coins of gold or silver or other metal or alloys of metals intended for the use of current money, whether in the resemblance of coins of the United States or foreign coins or of original design, shall be fined under this title. It doesn't say how much, but it's $5,000, or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. So if you try to use gold and silver as current money in any state that doesn't have legal tender, you can be fined federally $5,000 or in prison for 5 years, or both. That's why it's so important that we pass legal tender bills, or for instance, the Sound Money Act does all 3 things in the state. So not only does it get rid of sales tax in Florida, it protects every resident of Florida from being in prison for using gold and silver as legal tender.
Wow. A lot going on. You talked about something very interesting that Florida residents may be able to look forward to as well. And it feels like to me what you're talking about is making silver and gold functional again, yes, as well. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now there's 4 states in the union that have legal tender laws. You have Utah, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Overall, that's more of a symbolic gesture of saying that, hey, we recognize gold and silver as legal tender. It creates those protections, right? Gets rid of sales tax. But overall, it doesn't really do much for using gold and silver. Even with a depository. For instance, in Utah, they don't have a state depository, but they have the UPMA. And in Texas, they're the first state in the union that has a depository. But overall, those depositories aren't full. They're not being used because who uses gold and silver anymore? Like, even with this federal law, like, who's going to go into a store right now and pay with an ounce of gold $25 worth of products? Hardly anybody. But if we make it functional, just like we deposit our cash, because who carries cash anymore? If you're one of the few that carry cash, you're in the minority. Most people don't carry physical cash anymore. They deposit it. that deposited physical cash is digitized, and then you can spend it with a debit card. It's functional currency. And by making gold and silver digital or electronic, in this case, we use electronic because a lot of people don't like digital, it becomes functional again. And then the Texas depository, if it gets past the special legislative session, the Utah, if the bill passes in Utah or in Florida, the depositories will start getting filled up with people's gold because, hey, I know a guy who has 4 metric tons of silver. And if he deposits that into the state depository and it's digitized, he has liquidity. And that's the major issue with stackers. I started physically stacking with this year, and it's great. I have a safe stack of gold and silver, but I can't use it unless I take it to the store, buy it, trade it in for fiat or whatnot, or buy fiat, right? That's what we're doing, buying some fiat. But if I deposit in the state depository, now it's liquid, and I can spend my physical gold and silver anywhere I want. And it's not just in the state of Florida, because it will be used with either MasterCard or Visa card, and you can use your gold and silver anywhere on the planet as cash.
Yeah, and let me interject. I'm a big proponent of that, as long as it is audited, regulated, transparent, segregated to a degree, in terms of the state depositories, that the silver and gold are not accessible by the politicians to help pay for, whatever they want to use it to pay for. And I know that's the case. And I want to point out why I'm so much in favor of asset-backed digital currencies, right? Not central bank digital currencies, because there's a big difference. Asset-backed digital currencies, meaning there's the asset there, it's real, it's the digital currency is 100% backed by, in this case, silver and gold. And that is because, if you fly up here in your private jet today to St. Louis and I want to take you to lunch, and I say, hey, Daniel, let's go, I'm going to pay with silver, right? Well, there are maybe a few restaurants in St. Louis, but we would be hard pressed to find a restaurant that would take my American Silver Eagle to pay for lunch. So instead, what we would have to do is, you'd get in my car, we'd drive to my local coin shop, I would convert that 1 ounce of silver into fiat, right? But I would also be paying that, the premium, the spread difference on that. I would lose money in doing that. Then we get the fiat, then we would go to lunch and I would pay with that money. What you're talking about is, and a rather long-winded example on my behalf, is being able to actually have silver and gold in an account, basically, that is functional, that you can use, that it's seamless and you can use to spend, and this legislation provides for that.
100%. Yeah. And that's the most important thing. And that's what, look, we haven't, since we got off the gold standard in 1971, we haven't had the technology until recently, within the last 6 years, because of the advent of blockchain technology. Now, there are other companies out there throughout history who, like within the early 2000s, that were doing digital gold and silver. It's more of a database system. But database systems are really centralized, unless they have verbiage in there that's more of a bailment or bailee situation, where the gold is actually yours, and then the company, the third party, doesn't control it, which is what the companies that are part of our coalition, we have a coalition of gold and silver companies, digital and physical, that are part of the Citizens for Sound Money, do. Nobody, you own your gold and silver. And in Florida, that is exactly the language we have in there. We not only state that the legislature cannot appropriate, which is what you said, segregation, cannot appropriate any gold and silver. It also states that the state is acting as a bailee, where basically he's just warehousing your gold and silver. The gold and silver are yours. Plus, we took the Texas anti-confiscation language from their depository and put it in Florida. So the state and the federal government, by state law, cannot confiscate the gold and silver. And that is extremely important. And by digitizing that and being able to spend your gold, not the state's gold, your gold as currency, I mean, it gives everybody the opportunity to, one, protect their purchasing power by opting out of the Federal Reserve System and putting your cash into gold and silver. And that's what's extremely important with asset-backed digital currencies, or as we're calling it, electronic gold and silver at the state level. And in Florida, we have two great champions for this bill. We have Representative Bankson and Senator Rodriguez. Senator Rodriguez is out of the Monroe, Miami area, and Representative Bankson is in the Apopka area. And through our legislative efforts, Ron, we have, since October, we have met with 54 legislators in the House and the Senate. We also met with the CFO's office. We also met with Governor DeSantis's office. And almost every single one but one legislator, all the other 53 legislators and officers in the executive branch that we met are enthusiastic. In fact, Speaker Renner, the Speaker of the House of Florida, when we met with him, he said, quote, "I'm enthusiastically supportive." But he wanted more information. And he also said, who else is doing this? We told him, well, Texas, Utah, and a few other states. He's like, I want to be first. So the Speaker of the House wants to be the first state in the union to pass the Sound Money Act.
If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement. Daniel, isn't it ironic? I look at Florida, I look at Texas, not just with silver and gold legal tender legislation and movements, but I look at them in general as being growing progressive states, right? They've been modeled, leading the country in terms of growth and that. But isn't it ironic? So in my opinion, progressive, now financially progressive as well, but that we're talking about silver and gold, which are the oldest and really, in my opinion, the only forms of one of the only forms of real money, real value out there. That now where these progressive states are taking action to move silver and gold back to allowing them to reclaim their original status. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I would say that most of the states, when you say progressive, you don't mean politically progressive. You mean progressive in the sense as moving forward with like the economy and technology and so forth.
Progressive, not from a let's say liberal perspective, but more from a progressive in terms of they're making taking steps and doing things to grow their economy, to grow the standard of living within their states. That
yes.
When I look at states like Texas and Florida, like they're innovative in some ways, but that what we're talking about at the same time is bringing back and just allowing the state to recognize and use silver and gold as what they've always been, which is real money.
Yeah, 100%. No, 100. I agree. Florida, Texas, Utah, New Hampshire, all these states that we're working with are 100% progressive when it comes to their economies and growing and moving forward with the latest technology as well, right? Like Florida was the first state in the union to create a blockchain or fintech position under the governor. And I like saying Florida is the greatest state in the union. Texas is the second greatest state in the union. I know Texas thinks they're the greatest, so it's kind of a battle back and forth. Florida and Texas.
Don't forget about Missouri.
Yes, Missouri is the third greatest state in the union. Well, actually, I think New Hampshire would have a say in that. They were recently voted, I think, by the Cato Institute as the freest state in the union. It overtook Florida.
Yeah, and maybe I want to make sure, I want to clarify what I said earlier. What I didn't mean that from a perspective, because actually, I think it's ironic that in some ways conservative states are also states that are thriving right now, and at the same time the ones that are interested in bringing this legal tender legislation to the forefront and allowing their citizens to reclaim, because this is in the U.S. Constitution, allowing their citizens to reclaim their right to use silver and gold as legal tender. Did I do a better job second time around explaining myself?
Much better. Because
I
when
might
I hear
become a.
progressive as a political consultant for 23 years, I'm thinking, whoa, wait, progressive, that's bad word.
I know my lights started flickering in the basement when I said that. I don't know what happened, but
That's why I'm like, you sure about that? Yeah, yeah,
I meant progressive from a fact, like I said, that they're conservative, but they're
yeah,
growing and
yeah.
they're innovative. I guess innovative would have been a more appropriate term,
Very,
but anyway, nonetheless, I digress. Go ahead.
very much so. Like there's some states that are really still slow to accepting change, right? And you
Yeah.
wouldn't call those states progressive. But Florida and Texas, because we're such large economies, we're very progressive in moving forward and accepting technologies that other states will not. So yes, and
Yeah.
I think that's why Florida and Texas are such leaders in the state, not state, the country, because
Mm-hmm.
of the steps they're willing to take to move forward and accept new technologies and so forth. But yes, I forget what was the main point we were talking about, but
Well,
think,
let's bring us up to speed on what's going on specifically right now in Florida. What's the status of the legislation?
yeah. So today is. Can I say the date? I might.
Sure.
Yeah. So today is Monday, November 27th. We have submitted the Sound Money Act into bill drafting. Every state calls it different, but bill drafting essentially are the attorneys that the legislators send their bills, and then they make sure it's formatted correctly and doesn't violate any laws, and they change things to make sure it's compliant with state law. So we've submitted it now the second time. We're expecting the bill to come out of bill drafting this week, and then Representative Banks and Senator Rodriguez should file the bill this week as well. And once we file the bills, we get bill numbers. So we'll be able to put a bill number on like future interviews and our websites and so forth on what to support and what specifically to do. Then in December in Florida, Florida is different from most states. We actually meet starting in September, what they call committee weeks. And they meet for about 2 weeks a month. And they pass legislation. They listen to committees. We had just a special legislative session in November, but it's normally the first 2 weeks of the month. So in December, the week of the 4th and the week of the 11th, if we submit the bill in time, our goal is to get the bills heard and passed through one committee, at least one, hopefully two, one in the Senate, one in the House, before session starts next year, the 20th and 24th. So right now, we're waiting for the bills to come out. Once it comes out, we glance over it, make sure it wasn't changed too much. We submit the bill. We might start getting this bill pushed through the legislative process starting in December. And once we know which committees are assigned, for those that don't understand the process or don't know the process, once a bill is submitted and filed, then the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate, depending on what legislative body you're in, I think like Nebraska, it's a unicameral, but they choose where the bills go. So in the state of Florida, and every state's different, but I'm just talking about Florida, typically if the leadership only puts it in 2 committees, that means it's a favorable by leadership and they want to push it through. If it's put in 3 committees in each chamber, it's like it's neither here or there. They're passive. They don't want to kill it. They don't want to push it through. But if it goes into 4 committees, it's dead on arrival. If it goes to the 4 committees in Florida, it's not going to get through because that's a lot of hearings and there's not enough time. It's possible with enough grassroots, but we really only wanted to be in two committees. So that is where I would say if you live in the state of Florida, call your legislators. And we'll post a link underneath. We have a campaign on allignact.com for the specific Florida Sound Money Act. Go to that website, fill in your address, and then it'll pop up your legislators and send those legislators emails. And if you really want to push the Sound Money Act, I recommend making a phone call. Here's a statistic for lobbying statistic. An email counts for about 50 votes. A phone call counts for about 100 votes. A handwritten letter is around 1,000 votes. And if you go in person and lobby, you represent 5,000 votes. So yeah, send an email. It's about 50. You're representing about 50 votes. And it's important that you're sending it from your district because legislators want to hear from their constituents, not from somebody from Alaska for Florida. They want to hear from the constituents, not somebody from Tallahassee for Miami. If you live in Miami and you have a rep, you want to email them specifically, because that carries the most weight, and the legislators represent you. They don't represent the person in the district next door. They represent you. So it's most important you reach out to them. And I recommend giving them a call, because if you email them, that's 50. You call them, it's 150 votes. And if you want to visit them at the district office, that's 5,000 votes. So if you really want to get this pushed, go to the legislative district office when they're not in session and like, hey, I'm here to support this bill. So and go ahead.
Well, it's and Pat Holland from the Missouri Freedom Initiative has said this many times, and I heard you just say it as well. This is a grassroots movement, and grassroots support is critical. So if you're watching this video and you live in Florida, or you live in Missouri, or you live in Texas, reach out to your representatives, or reach out to someone like Daniel or Patrick Holland and see what you can do to help support it, because it does make a difference. I mean, it takes people, and the more the better.
First Mining Gold is a development company advancing two of the largest gold projects in Canada. Springpole in Ontario and Duparquet, located in Quebec, each already has 5 million ounces of gold reserves, but exploration initiatives are underway at both projects to find even more gold. First Mining is well-financed, has zero debt, and owns an interest in 4 additional Canadian gold development projects.
100%. And if you enjoy and you really like what we're doing at Citizens for Sound Money, please visit our website, citizens4soundmoney.org, and donate. There's a donation link, and donate to our cause. Lobbying is not cheap. We're a nonprofit 501c4 organization. We don't sell anything. Oh, okay, we have a little store. We sell some things, but it wasn't really fun to us. We need to raise money to continue lobbying, not just in Florida, but across the country. And just in Florida alone, it's over $10,000 a month to cover. And then all of our lobbying efforts is around $20,000 a month. And we're a nonprofit, and we're burning through our reserves, our war chest, as you can say, in the political world. So if you want to see the Sound Money Act pass in Florida, if you want us to continue putting pressure on legislators across the country, please visit our website. Please donate. Be as generous as possible. We typically have companies and part of our coalition who donate physical gold and silver if you give over a certain threshold. I think if you go to sorry about plugging a guy, but he's part of our coalition, Rob Keents from Gold Silver Pros. He's doing a donation. If you give $250 or more, he'll send you 1 free ounce. $500 or more, I think he'll send you the 1 ounce and a 5-ounce bar. The first 20, I think the first 15. So we have people who are donating physical gold and silver, so you get a bang for your buck to donate as well. But even if we don't have a special like that or a giveaway, please give so we can pass the Sound Money Act, not just in Florida, but across the country.
Yeah, no, I don't mind you mentioning Rob Keents. He's a person I've watched for years and learned from, seems like almost 10 years now. He's been a real warrior and proponent for the precious metals industry. Daniel, thank you. Can we count on you for updates here in the coming months, and hopefully some celebrations as we see some possible movement in this legislation?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, as we progress through the different states, as they progress through the legislative process, I'll be 100% here updating you.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about Florida today, but I want to make it real clear that your organization is a national organization, and that long-term, the vision is to help many states forward the similar type legislation. Is that accurate?
Yeah, not only are we national, we're actually international. We have a Citizens for Sound Money Turkey because of their inflation problem, and we have a student that we give a scholarship to who is educating his fellow college students and friends, and creates YouTube videos in Turkey. I don't know. I forget what the language is that they speak. But yeah, we support him, and that's where some of our money goes as well, to support our Turkey and any other country that wants to bring sound money to them, to their state or province or whatever. We will support. But yes, right now we're primarily America, and we have a branch in Turkey, but we're a national, international nonprofit pushing sound money legislation.
Well, you can count on Ron's basement and all of my fellow basement dwellers here to be cheering for you all the way. Thanks again, Daniel, and we will look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you for having me on again, Ron.